You know, every single time you check a bag at the airport, well, the reason for some of those security rules goes back to the story we're talking about today. We're diving into the bombing of Air India Flight 182. It's a tragedy that didn't just change how we all fly, but it also started a search for justice that, believe it or not, is still a raw subject for so many.
So let's just start with one number, just one, 329. On June 23, 1985, that's how many lives, men, women, and so many children, were just wiped out in a single moment. That number, it's really the heart of this whole story, the staggering human cost of it all.
And let's be absolutely clear, this was no accident, not even close. This was a carefully, meticulously planned act of terrorism. And to put it in perspective for you, for 16 long years, right up until 9/11, this was the deadliest act of aviation terror the world had ever seen.
All right, let's get into what actually happened. I mean, how does a totally routine flight across the Atlantic, full of people just going home or on vacation, how does it just vanish?
Okay, so here's the scene. The plane was a big Boeing 747, nicknamed Kanishka. It was on this long-haul route from Montreal, heading all the way to Bombay, with stops in London and Delhi. Everything seemed perfectly normal. It's cruising along at about 31,000 feet over the Atlantic, not far from the Irish coast. And then, bam, 7:14 in the morning, it just blinks off the radar screens. Gone.
And we now know why. In a matter of seconds, the entire aircraft just disintegrated in the air. The cause was a powerful bomb that had been hidden in a suitcase, tucked away in the cargo hold. By the time rescue crews got to the location, it was too late. There was nothing left but debris floating on the water.
So why? I mean, something this calculated, this horrific, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? To understand the motive, we actually have to go back in time and look thousands of miles away to a really intense political conflict that was brewing in India. And the fallout from that conflict had spilled right over into Canada.
The main trigger, the real flashpoint, was something called Operation Blue Star. This happened in 1984. The Indian Army raided the Golden Temple, which is the holiest shrine in Sikhism, to deal with militants who were holed up inside. Now, you can imagine, this act caused massive outrage among Sikhs all over the world, and it poured fuel on the fire for extremist groups like one called Babar Khalsa. They wanted revenge, and this was all tied into their fight for an independent Sikh nation.
So after the bombing, what kicked off was one of the most massive, most complex, and honestly, most frustrating criminal investigations in Canadian history. As they started digging, they slowly began to uncover this incredibly sophisticated plot, and it also exposed some absolutely shocking gaps in airport security.
And here's the key breakthrough they made. The bomb, it was inside a suitcase that had been checked in, but the person who checked it in, they never actually got on the plane. This whole idea of unaccompanied luggage, it was a catastrophic security flaw. It's literally the reason why today, if you check a bag, you have to be on that flight. That rule was born from this tragedy.
But wait, it gets even more chilling. As investigators kept digging, they realized something truly awful. This wasn't just a single attack on a single plane. No, the plot was way bigger. The goal was to cause devastation in two places at once, on the very same day.
See, there was a second bomb. This one was meant for another Air India flight, this time leaving from Tokyo, but it actually went off too early, on the ground at Narita Airport while it was being transferred. It tragically killed 2 baggage handlers. And suddenly, it all clicked into place for investigators. This was a coordinated, two-pronged attack. The goal was to hit 2 planes, cripple the airline, and just cause maximum terror.
The focus of the investigation pretty quickly narrowed down to a group of Sikh extremists who were living in Canada. And 2 names kept coming up. First, Talwinder Singh Parmar. He was seen as the leader, the alleged mastermind of the whole thing. And then there was Inderjeet Singh Rayat, who was the bomb maker, the guy who physically put the devices together.
Okay, so they had their suspects, but, identifying them is one thing. Actually bringing them to justice, that turned out to be a whole other battle. And it was a long, painful one that would leave the families of the victims feeling just completely let down and ignored for decades.
Let's just talk about the human cost again for a second. It was just immense. And here's something that gets lost sometimes. The vast majority of the people on that plane, 268 of them, were Canadian citizens. So while it was an Air India flight, this was truly an attack on Canada. To this day, it remains the single deadliest act of terrorism in Canadian history, period.
So after 2 decades, after what became the longest and most expensive investigation in the country's history, how many people were convicted for the deaths of 329 people? One. Just one person. The bomb maker. The alleged masterminds? They were either found not guilty or were killed before they could even face a verdict. It's just unbelievable.
You can only imagine how the families felt. For them, this outcome was just a total failure of justice, a slap in the face. But it also hardened their resolve. They decided that if the courts wouldn't deliver justice, they would make damn sure that the world never forgot the 329 people who were lost and the story of exactly what happened to them.
You know, this whole horrific event really served as a brutal, brutal wake-up call for the entire world of aviation. It laid bare these huge failures in both airport security and in intelligence gathering, and it directly led to so many of the safety rules we just think are normal now. And the big one, as we mentioned, is making sure every single bag in the cargo hold has a passenger on the plane to go with it.
So, the story of Air India 182, it's really so much more than just a historical tragedy. It's a lesson that's still so relevant today. A lesson about the real human cost of extremism, and why it's so incredibly important. And it leaves all of us with a really heavy question, right? One that every country needs to keep asking itself over and over. How do we stop this from happening again?